This contract shifts all the liability. If you sign this, sir, your company takes the hit." The boardroom went utterly silent. The words of Zoe Carter hovered in the air like a hammer ready to fall. She was 16, standing in her worn sneakers, and a cleaning badge at the glass entrance of the 37th floor conference room. She pointed straight at the document Adam Harrison was about to sign. His pen hovered in midair. His silver eyebrows knitted together. His wife, Olivia Harrison, blinked in surprise. Mark Sullivan, the Texan businessman with a slick smile, let out an awkward, low chuckle. "Excuse me?" he asked, his voice too calm, too measured. "I read that clause on page 14, Zoe continued. "It forces every merger-related liability onto Harrison Investments. If anything goes wrong after the merger, fraud, lawsuits, defaults, your company takes the blow. Sullivan Global walks away safe." The young executives around the table exchanged uneasy glances. One man tugged the contract closer to himself. Another tapped on his tablet to double-check the page. Olivia leaned forward. "She shouldn't even be here. She's just the cleaner's daughter," someone murmured. But Zoe didn't flinch. Just 8 hours ago, everything had felt simple. The cleaning crew had moved through Harrison Investments, upper floors, like clockwork, unseen and unheard. Zoe, wearing a faded hoodie and a lanyard labeled Building Services, was sorting shredded files and wiping glass doors while her mother vacuumed the hallway. That was their routine. No fuss, no questions, just finish the job and leave, until she spotted the folder. Someone had left it in the copier tray, slightly ajar. Its cover stamp read, "Final Draft Merger Agreement." Something inside it called to Zoe, not curiosity, but instinct. She wasn't like other teens. She didn't scroll endlessly on her phone. She read policy manuals, watched business documentaries with her grandfather, and once wrote a school essay titled How Enron Collapsed. She opened the folder slowly, her eyes scanning the legalese. Then she paused. It was subtle, buried in subparagraph C, line 3 of the liability clause, but it was there, a reversal of responsibility. If the deal collapsed or legal issues arose later, Harrison Investments, rather than Sullivan Global, would bear all financial and legal ruin. It was a trap. "Mom," Zoe said, hurrying down the hallway, "have you ever seen a contract that gives away an entire company like this?" Her mother, Maria, barely looked up from polishing a window. "Zoe, stop messing with their things," she said. "But what if they fire us both?" Zoe snapped back. Maria's lips tightened, and Zoe closed her mouth, but her mind kept racing. Now, back in the present, the boardroom occupants sat frozen. Olivia's hand tightened around the armrest. Sullivan's gaze sharpened. Adam Harrison stared at Zoe. Slowly, he lowered his pen. "You're saying this clause flips liability?" His voice was calm, too calm. "Yes, sir," Zoe replied. "It's disguised in plain language that sounds legal, but if your team doesn't read every line, it's meant to confuse. It doesn't protect your company. It sets you up to take the fall." Olivia's voice cracked like ice. "Adam, this makes no sense. She's just a child." But Adam no longer listened to his wife. His eyes stayed on the page in front of him. He flipped to page 14. He read, paused, and something in his jaw tensed. Mark leaned forward. "Are we really putting stock in conspiracy theories from someone who polishes doorknobs?" Zoe's cheeks flushed, but she didn't back down. "You can laugh, but if he signs off on this, your company's name ends up on every lawsuit that follows." A long silence, then Adam's voice, low and resolute. "Escort her out." Security moved quickly. Zoe stayed tall as they led her toward the door. But just before it clicked shut behind her, she looked back one last time at Adam Harrison's eyes. For a brief moment, he didn't see a cleaner's daughter. He saw a warning, a mirror, and a mistake he almost made. His pen never touched the paper. The next morning, silence at Harrison Investments felt different. no longer calm or muted, but taut. Zoe Carter sat alone in the lobby security office, hands folded, chin high, heart pounding. The marble floors reflected cold light from the tall windows behind her. She'd been there over an hour. No one spoke, no one offered water, no one even told her what would happen next. Maria sat beside her, shoulders stiff, face unreadable. Maria hadn't said a word since they were pulled from the night shift and told to wait downstairs, but the worry in her eyes said it all. "I'm sorry, Mom," Zoe finally whispered. Maria turned her head slowly. "You should be," she said, flatly. "I clean this building to keep food on the table, not so you can walk into boardrooms like you own the place." Zoe looked down. "I didn't mean to embarrass you. I saw something dangerous and I couldn't let him sign it." "I raised you to be brave," Maria said softly, "but I didn't raise you to be reckless." Before Zoe could respond, the door opened. A stern woman from Human Resources walked in with a clipboard, her heels clicking sharply against the tile. "Mrs. Carter," she said without looking at Zoe, "you're placed on leave, pending review. We'll let you know soon." Maria's lips pressed together. She stood up, grabbing Zoe's arm. "Come on." Zoe's stomach lurched as they walked out into the cold of Manhattan. She looked back one last time at the tower of glass and steel, the place she thought she could make a difference. Now she wasn't even allowed inside. Meanwhile, 30 floors above, in his private office, Adam Harrison sat alone. The unsigned contract lay before him, the pages spread like evidence at a crime scene. His finger traced the clause Zoe had pointed out, subparagraph C, line 3. She was right. The language wasn't just misleading, it was deliberate, designed to look routine, while setting up Harrison Investments to shoulder all liability. He rubbed his temple slowly. "How on earth did I miss this?" Olivia's voice echoed in his memory from last night. "It's a standard clause, Adam. Trust me." Trust? That word used to mean something. He opened his laptop and began cross-referencing other contracts with Sullivan Global. Legal phrasing, subsidiary names, offshore structures, everything looked too clean, too coordinated. His phone buzzed. "Olivia!" He hesitated, then answered. "You didn't sign it, did you?" she asked right away. "No," Adam replied, his voice flat. "You're overthinking it. We vetted Sullivan Global. You're letting that girl get to your head." He paused. "She saw what none of us did." Olivia laughed, but it was brittle. "Come on, she's just a teenager, the cleaner's daughter. You're really doubting me because of a kid." Adam didn't respond. "I'm on my way up," she said, then hung up. Down the block, Zoe sat on her apartment sofa, a mug of hot chocolate cooling in her hands. Their living room was small, warm, lived in. Maria sat across from her, scrolling through job listings. "Do you regret it?" Zoe asked softly. Maria sighed. "I regret that you lost faith in grown-ups doing their jobs." Zoe said nothing, but deep inside she felt certain she hadn't been wrong. A ping broke the quiet. It was an email from a name she didn't know, Daniel Brooks. Subject line, "You saw it too." Zoe's eyes widened. She clicked. Inside was a short message. "I used to work there. I know what you saw. If you're willing to talk, I'll listen." Her fingers hovered over the keyboard. Then she began to type, because maybe, just maybe, she wasn't alone. That evening, Adam retrieved an old file from his safe labeled Harrison Internal Brooks Review. He flipped through pages of flagged risks, buried audits, reports his board had ignored 2 years ago. And on one page, scrawled in red pen, "Risk exposure too centralized. If they plant a clause like this, we're done. Signed, Daniel Brooks." Adam leaned back, eyes closing, and for the first time in years, he felt something unfamiliar. Doubt. Olivia never liked to wait. She walked into Adam's office with the confidence of someone who'd never heard no. Her heels clicked sharply across the hardwood floors as she approached the sleek black desk where her husband sat, staring at the contract. "It's still sitting there," she said, folding her arms. "You've had a whole day." Adam didn't look up. "And I need more time," he replied. Olivia's smile faded. "Adam, this deal is time-sensitive. Mark is offering terms nobody else would touch. You saw the numbers. I also saw a clause that nearly gutted my company." Olivia circled the edge of the contract with a manicured nail. "One clause, legal wording. You know how these things work. Are you really prioritizing the cleaner's daughter over me?" That made him look up slowly. "She saw it," he said. "No one else did. Not you, not the legal team, not me." They sat in silence. Olivia's expression stayed steady, but her tone dropped a notch. "She's a child, Adam, and she made—" "You question everything, that should worry you." "No," he said, standing. "What worries me is that she was right." Later that night, Zoe curled up by the radiator in their apartment, flipping through pages Daniel Brooks had sent her in encrypted PDFs. Tax statements, shell company breakdowns, merger language comparisons. She didn't understand all of it, but she understood enough. They were setting a trap. Brooks had confirmed it in their call earlier. Mark Sullivan used nearly identical language in a merger back in Houston. The target company took all the liability. Within 6 months, it collapsed under legal fees. Sullivan walked away wealthier. Zoe highlighted key terms: indemnification, contingent liability, performance burden. She didn't know every definition, but she recognized rotten intentions. "I can't believe he's married to that woman," Zoe muttered. Maria, doing dishes, let out a humorless snort. Power and ambition have always gone hand in hand. At that same moment, Adam sat at the bar inside the private gold lounge overlooking downtown New York. He wasn't drinking. He was watching. At a corner table, half obscured by frosted glass, sat Olivia. Across from her, Mark Sullivan. They were laughing. Olivia's hand lay lightly on Mark's wrist. His grin was wide, easy, as though they were old friends, maybe more. Adam's jaw clenched. He couldn't hear their words, but their body language said it all. Olivia leaned in. Mark nodded, then slipped her a small flash drive before brushing her fingers in a gesture that wasn't professional. Adam turned away, bile rising in his throat. Was the woman he had built his life with using him this whole time? Back at home, Zoe's phone buzzed. A text from Brooks. Look into Olivia's spending. 3 offshore transfers in her name. Cayman Islands, British Virgin Islands, and Zurich. Zoe's eyes widened. "She's involved," she whispered. "She's not just clueless, she's in on it." She opened her laptop and pulled up public transaction records. Her hands trembled. There it was. Olivia Harrison's name linked to an inactive trust in the British Virgin Islands. At that very moment, Adam opened his email and saw a message from his bank's compliance team. Subject: suspicious activity. Internal transfer alert. He clicked. Olivia had tried to authorize a movement of $2,500,000 from one of the company's reserve accounts. It was stopped just in time. Adam sank into his chair. The noose wasn't tightening. It was inside his own home. Somewhere, in the quiet of the night, 3 people couldn't sleep. Adam Harrison, now certain he stood on a collapsing foundation. Zoe Carter, clutching puzzle pieces far too complex for a 16-year-old, and Olivia Harrison, seated beside Mark Sullivan in a sleek black SUV, whispering, "He's digging deeper." "Then we bury him before he uncovers the roots," Mark replied calmly. It all began with a single email. No subject line, no sender name, just an audio file. Adam hesitated before opening it. He had been staring at his ceiling for over an hour, long after his last assistant left. The silence felt heavier, as though the building itself held its breath. He clicked play. Olivia's voice came first, calm and calculating. "He won't question it, not if I push at the right moment." Then Mark Sullivan's deep drawl. "And if he does, we remind him what he has to lose." Adam froze. He replayed it 3 times. When it finally sank in, something inside him cracked, not loud or visible, but irreversible. He forwarded the file to his private attorney, then leaned back and stared at the ceiling again. This time, not in confusion, but with clarity. Olivia wasn't just involved. She was orchestrating it. Zoe stood outside the massive bronze doors of the New York Public Library, clutching a folder and a flash drive Brooks had mailed her that morning. Her fingers were numb, not from the cold, but from fear. Everything they had uncovered pointed one way. Someone was trying to sink Harrison Investments. She stepped inside and found her way to the computer lab. The files were encrypted, but Brooks had included a handwritten key. As she typed, the truth unfolded. 3 attempted mergers, 3 ruined companies, all tied to Mark Sullivan. And in each case, buried deep in the documents, were traces of Olivia Harrison's digital approval credentials. She wasn't just helping Sullivan, she'd been helping him for years. That evening, Zoe tried to deliver the physical documents to Daniel Brooks at his apartment, but when she arrived, the door was ajar. Inside, empty, no sign of Brooks, no evidence of a struggle, only a single envelope on the kitchen table labeled ZC. She opened it. Inside were 2 things, a thumb drive and a sticky note. "They know I'm helping you. Don't come back here. Find someone you can trust soon." Back in the city, Adam sat in his car in front of the old courthouse on Park Avenue. The building had closed years ago, but he wasn't there to see a judge. He was meeting Rachel Bennett, a civil rights attorney and former prosecutor known for taking on cases nobody else would touch. She entered without fanfare, her black coat billowing behind her like a cloak of quiet justice. "Mr. Harrison," she said as she slid into the passenger seat, "you came to the right person, but this is bigger than contract fraud." "I know," Adam said. "This is organized financial subversion, maybe racketeering. I need to protect my company," he said, "and I need to protect a girl who saw it first." Rachel raised an eyebrow. "A girl? She's 16, named Zoe Carter. She spotted it before any of us did." For the first time, the lawyer smiled. "Then she might be our most valuable witness." The next morning, Zoe returned to the Harrison building. Security was tighter. She wasn't on the visitor list, so she waited, her fingers wrapping a bag of evidence, until one of the junior staff members, someone she recognized from late-night cleaning shifts, walked by. He paused, glanced around and whispered, "Mr. Harrison said if you came back, I should and take you right up." When Adam saw her, something in him softened. He stood and held out his hand, not like a CEO, but like a man finally facing his own blind spots. "I owe you more than an apology," he said. "I owe you the truth." Zoe looked up at him, her voice quiet but firm. "Then let's expose it before someone else vanishes." They sat side by side in his private conference room, papers and screens spread before them like a battlefield map. Rachel Bennett joined minutes later, nodding at Zoe. "This is your fight now," she told her, "but with the right moves, we win before they even know we've started." Zoe nodded, nerves taut but steady, because for the first time she wasn't alone. And the cracks in the marble weren't just breaking a building, they were letting the truth shine through. The courtroom hadn't been scheduled yet. No subpoenas issued. No press conference announcing the news, but the war had begun. Inside Adam Harrison's office, the walls no longer displayed corporate awards or investment forecasts. They were now covered with whiteboards full of timelines, connections, bank transfers, and alias names. At the center sat Zoe Carter, a 16-year-old girl with a borrowed laptop and a folder overflowing with secrets. Rachel Bennett stood by the window, phone pressed to her ear, her voice low but urgent. Adam, silent, pored over a printed spreadsheet, his jaw clenched tight. Then Rachel hung up. That was my contact at the Justice Department. They're watching Sullivan quietly, but they need more to move forward. Zoe reached into her backpack and slid a yellow file across the table. This just arrived, she said, from Brooks before he disappeared. Adam took the folder. Inside were offshore account ledgers. 3 names leapt from the pages: Olivia Harrison, Mark Sullivan, and a shell corporation called Raven Cross Holdings, registered in Belize, funneling quarterly payments from failed merger payouts. Rachel whistled. This is more than fraud. It's a long game, predatory, calculated, and it began right under my nose, Adam said bitterly. That night, Zoe and Maria sat on the fire escape of their apartment building. Below, the city, buzzed with yellow taxis and music drifting from restaurant patios. Maria handed Zoe a mug of chamomile tea, her hands trembling. They called again, she said. Told me if I don't keep quiet, they'll cancel your school record. Said, they can make things disappear. Zoe stared ahead. I'm a kid, Maria. This isn't my battle. It became yours the moment they used people like us as their cover, she replied calmly, with conviction. In that moment, Maria saw something she hadn't expected. Not defiance, but purpose. A sign that Zoe wasn't trying to prove anything. She only wanted to set things right. The next day, Adam stepped into the grand hall of the Harrison Foundation Gala, wearing a black tuxedo and a focused expression. The gala had been Olivia's idea: charity, media, smiling donors. It had always been her domain, but that night Adam took the microphone. Before we begin, he said, his eyes sweeping over the glittering crowd, I want to speak not as a CEO, but as a man who has made mistakes. Olivia froze beside the champagne table, her fingers tightening around a glass stem. Years ago, I believed building an empire meant trusting numbers alone, Adam continued, but numbers don't betray you. People do. The audience murmured. A few eyes flicked toward Olivia. I reopened every document our board has ever signed, and what I found, what one brave young woman found, has shaken me to my core. Rachel stood at the back, arms crossed, expression unreadable. Adam stepped off the stage and left before questions could start. That night, Zoe sat by her bedroom window, watching the skyline blink alive. A folder lay open on her lap, filled with newly flagged emails. One line from Olivia to Mark stood out like a blade. He's pulling away. You know what to do. Just as she began copying it to a secure drive, the lights flickered. Then her laptop screen went black. Her phone vibrated. One message from an unknown number. Stop digging, or we'll dig you up first. Zoe's hands shook, but she didn't close the laptop. She grabbed a Sharpie and scrawled 3 words. On a fresh page, I won't back down, because this was no longer just a company, it was a battlefield. And the girl they thought nobody would listen to was becoming the voice nobody could ignore. By morning, the headlines hadn't broken yet, but whispers raced through the financial district. In elevators and coffee shops, people murmured, Harrison. Investments under internal review. Anonymous whistleblower halts merger. Some said it was routine, others smelled blood in the water. Inside his office, Adam Harrison sat stone-faced, staring out at the city below. I built this company from scratch, he muttered, and I nearly handed it to a ghost in a suit. Rachel Bennett, seated before him, flipped through the evidence. File. You didn't hand it over. You paused. That's what matters. She laid down the page with the Belize ledger details, Sullivan's signature move. But now it's not just about business, she added. It's about justice. Meanwhile, Olivia Harrison descended the grand staircase of their Fifth Avenue penthouse, dressed in navy satin, as if nothing was unraveling beneath her feet. The housekeeper handed her a cream envelope. "This was left in the mail," she said. Olivia opened it casually. Inside, a single photograph. Adam standing with Zoe and Rachel, heads bowed over documents, 3 signatures circled in red, and a sticky note. "You're losing control." Olivia didn't flinch. She reached for her phone and dialed Mark Sullivan. That evening, at a private summit in the Four Seasons, New York, Mark Sullivan moved through the crowd like a man with nothing to hide, whiskey glass in hand, charming investors with one smile after another. But something was different tonight. People nodded at him, but too briefly. Some avoided eye contact. Others whispered as he passed. He found Adam near the balcony. "Well," Mark drawled, "you stirred quite a pot." Adam didn't extend his hand. "I didn't stir anything," he replied. "I just stopped pretending I was blind." Mark leaned in, voice smooth. "Go public with this, and you'll bury more than me. You'll drag your wife's name through the mud. Your board will panic. The stock will plummet. Is that the legacy you want?" Adam didn't flinch. "I'd rather lose the company than live a lie." Back at Zoe's apartment, Maria hung up the landline and turned to her daughter. "That was your school principal," she said quietly. "Someone filed a complaint claiming you were emotionally disruptive on school grounds." Zoe blinked. "I haven't been to school this week." Maria's hands trembled. "They're trying to push you off balance. They're nervous." Zoe looked down at the stack of papers in her lap. She didn't feel shaken. She felt ready. By week's end, Rachel filed the first legal motion, a request for an injunction and an independent audit of Sullivan Global. She also petitioned for whistleblower protection for Zoe Carter. The media caught on before sunset. Harrison Investments suspends merger pending legal review. Anonymous teen identified as key witness. Photos of Zoe from her high school's website were cropped, shared, retweeted. Some praised her, others doubted her. A few attacked her, but no one could ignore her. At dawn the next morning, Adam walked into the boardroom and set a stack of documents on the table. His executives waited, faces tight with tension. "I should have seen this sooner," he began, "but I let comfort blind me." He passed out the audit, Shell Company records, emails, and the audio clip. Then he looked each one of them in the eye. "You have a choice," he said. "Help me clean house from within, or watch it burn from the outside." No one spoke, but one by one they nodded. Miles away, in a cafe near Wall Street, Olivia Harrison sat across from Mark Sullivan again. Her eyes no longer sparkled with charm. "He's not going quietly," she said. Mark smirked. "Then maybe it's time we stop being quiet too." He slid a black folder across the table. Inside was a list of names, judges, reporters, one federal clerk. Olivia closed the folder slowly. "We bury them," she said. Outside, across the street, Zoe Carter watched them from a city bus window, her phone camera rolling every frame. The game wasn't quiet anymore, it was only just begun. By Monday morning, Harrison Investments was not a financial fortress. It was a battlefield. The company's servers were down for routine maintenance, but everyone knew better. Compliance teams worked overtime. Legal counsel whispered behind closed doors. Human resources flagged emails for keywords like offshore, Sullivan, whistleblower, and Adam Harrison. He didn't flinch. He stood in the center of it all, calm, clear-eyed, and ready for war. High above in their penthouse, Olivia Harrison sat alone in the winter light, her phone pressed to her ear. "They're coming after us," she whispered. Mark Sullivan's voice came steady over the line. "Let them. We don't run, we counterattack." "You said the papers were buried." "They were. Someone dug them up." "Don't you get it?" Olivia hissed. "It's not Adam leading this, it's the..." "Girl!" "She's a child. And she's tearing this whole damn tower apart." A silence followed. Then Mark said coldly, "Then maybe it's time we remind the world who really holds the power." At school, Zoe Carter tried to keep her head down, but it was impossible. Half the students stared at her as if she were a ghost. The other half avoided her like she carried a virus. Some whispered traitor, others whispered hero. She ignored them all. As she opened her locker, a folded note fell out. She opened it carefully. "We know where you live. Stay silent. Stay safe." Her fingers trembled, but only for a moment. She tucked the note into her pocket, grabbed her books, and walked straight to the principal's office. She told him everything. By day's end, Rachel Bennett had secured a protection order for Zoe and Maria. That night, Adam received an anonymous text. Just 4 words, "She's not worth it." He stared at the screen for a long time, then picked up the landline and called Rachel. "Can you get federal eyes on this yet?" "They're watching," she said, "but they need someone willing to testify publicly." Silence. Then Adam exhaled. "Then I will." The next morning, the New York Times ran the story. CEO exposes internal conspiracy. Teen whistleblower unravels billion-dollar scheme. Zoe's name wasn't printed, but the reports spread everywhere. Radio, Twitter, morning TV. At a press briefing, Adam stood at a podium flanked by Rachel and 2 federal agents. "I was blind," he told the world. "Not just to fraud, but to courage. A 16-year-old girl saved my company from the inside out, the same company that never saw her beyond her mother's uniform." He paused. "She saw what we refused to see. From today on, we will see her." That afternoon, Zoe returned home to find a crowd outside their building. Neighbors, journalists, strangers holding handmade signs that read, "We believe Zoe. Truth has no age." She stopped on the bottom step, stunned. Maria gently took her hand. "They're here to thank you, not harm you." But across town, in a luxurious apartment behind tinted windows, Mark Sullivan sat in dark silence, looking at a freeze frame of Zoe stepping onto the witness stand. Then he looked up at Olivia, who paced behind him in tight circles. "She's just a kid," Olivia snapped. "You really think they'll let her bring us down?" Mark's voice was ice cold. "Kids don't bring down empires," he said. He leaned forward. "Symbols do." He stood, shut his tablet, and strode toward the door. "Let's break her before she becomes one." Outside the courthouse, the marble steps groaned under flashing cameras and murmuring crowds. Gray clouds hung low over Manhattan, but the energy was electric. Inside courtroom 42B, the air felt even heavier. Adam adjusted his tie and glanced. At the wooden doors behind him, Rachel Bennett stood beside him, reviewing her notes. Zoe Carter sat 2 rows behind them, dressed simply, her hair neatly braided, her eyes bright with quiet fire. It was the first day of testimony. Mark Sullivan sat across the aisle, his posture calm as though money could fix anything. Olivia Harrison, poised in a slate-gray suit, sat next to him, eyes vacant, lips unmoving. The judge entered. "All rise." Rachel began with measured precision. She painted the picture not with flames, but with facts, contracts, dates, forensic analysis. One by one, she exposed the network of shell companies and forged authorizations funneling corporate liabilities straight to Harrison Investments, while Sullivan and Olivia quietly profited overseas. Olivia didn't glance at Adam once. Then came the moment everyone awaited. Rachel stood. "Your Honor, I ask to call Zoe Carter to the stand." Gasps rippled. Reporters scribbled notes. Zoe stepped forward slowly, not as a victim, not even as a child, but as someone who dared to speak the truth. She placed her hand on the Bible, was sworn in, and sat down. Rachel gave her a gentle nod. "Miss Carter, how did you first become involved in this matter?" Zoe's voice was steady. "I was helping my mother on the 37th floor. She works the night cleaning shifts. I saw the contract in the copy room. The signature on it didn't look right." "And when you read the fine print, what stood out?" Rachel asked. Zoe nodded. There was a clause buried deep. It transferred all liability from Sullivan Global to Mr. Harrison's company. If something went wrong, only one side would take the hit. Rachel leaned closer. "Why speak up? You were 16. No one asked you to read it." Zoe looked directly at Olivia, then at Mark, then back to the jury. "Just because I clean your floors doesn't mean I don't see the dirt." The courtroom froze. Even the judge's face changed. Olivia's hand twitched. Mark didn't smile this time. The defense came at Zoe hard. Mark's attorney tried to rattle her. "Miss Carter, did you understand all the legal jargon in that contract?" "No, sir," Zoe replied. "But I understood enough to know someone was setting us up to fail." "You consider yourself a business law expert?" "No, but I don't think you need a degree to see when someone's digging a trap." The jury watched her with new respect, not just as a girl, but as the voice of every overlooked worker, told to mind their place. After recess, Adam took the stand. Rachel asked him one question. "What made you believe her?" He paused. "My gut told me she was right, but more than that, I remembered something I had forgotten." "What was that?" "That integrity doesn't depend on position. Sometimes the cleaner's daughter sees the cracks before the board does." Next, Olivia Harrison took the stand. The courtroom held its breath. She sat straight until the prosecution played the audio file. "He won't question it, not if I push at the right moment." Olivia's eyes closed, her hands folded, and for the first time since the trial began, she spoke without a practiced tone. "I didn't mean for it to go this far," she said, her voice hollow. "I thought if I could just push the deal through, Adam wouldn't notice." "And when Zoe exposed it," Rachel pressed. Olivia's voice cracked. "I wanted her out of the way because she saw everything I worked so hard to hide." Outside, cameras prowled like wolves. Zoe exited through a side door. Adam followed. "You didn't have to come," she said. "I owed you," he replied, "to be the man you thought I was when you walked into that boardroom." She managed a faint smile. "You're getting there." Olivia returned to her seat beside Mark, not saying a word, but her silence spoke volumes. The empire was unraveling. In the jury's eyes, they had witnessed not just fraud, but betrayal, of trust, of truth, of the people no one expected to speak. Tomorrow, they would decide. That night, the world waited. The verdict arrived just before noon. The jury filed, in faces solemn. Zoe sat between Rachel and Maria, her fingers clutching the hem of her skirt. Adam stood behind them, his hands clasped in front of him. Across the room, Mark's smirk faded, and Olivia stared at the floor. The judge called the court to order. On the charge of conspiracy to commit corporate fraud, we find the defendants guilty. On the charge of falsifying financial documents, guilty. On the charge of obstruction and tampering with legal contracts, guilty. Each word fell like a gavel crack, a lifetime of manipulation undone. Mark's smirk vanished. Olivia shut her eyes. The judge pronounced the sentence, 10 years in federal prison for both defendants, with no parole for the first 7 years. Zoe exhaled for the first time in days. Outside the courthouse, the world had shifted. Reporters shouted questions. Microphones jabbed forward. "Zoe, how does it feel to be the girl who saved a corporation? Mr. Harrison, will you rebuild? Harrison Investments? Rachel, what's next for your young witness?" Zoe answered only one. "What do you want people to remember from this case?" She paused, then looked at the nearest camera. "That truth doesn't depend on your title And justice doesn't care how clean your shoes are. In the weeks that followed, Harrison Investments didn't collapse, it reformed. Adam Harrison led a full restructuring. Olivia's name was stripped from every corporate record. Sullivan's assets were frozen. Rachel Bennett joined as chief ethics officer, and Zoe Carter, she was offered a full scholarship. At a press conference in the very building she once cleaned, Adam announced the news personally. Today, Harrison Investments establishes the Zoe Carter Fellowship for young minds with vision and courage. Zoe didn't just save this company, she reminded us who we ought to be. Applause rolled like thunder. Zoe stood beside him, her blazer over a white blouse, a gentle smile on her lips. Later that night, Adam retreated to his office, no longer alone. Zoe stood across from him, holding a manila envelope. "I got my acceptance letter to Columbia University," she announced. Her eyes shining. He smiled. "You deserve more than that. You've earned a seat at any table you want now." She hesitated, then asked, "Do you regret any of it?" He gazed out the window at the New York skyline glowing gold. "I regret not seeing it sooner," he said softly. "But I don't regret the person who stood up when I couldn't." Zoe nodded and placed the envelope on his desk. Days later, Olivia Harrison was processed into the federal detention center in New Jersey. She offered no statement, no appeal, only silence. In a cold, concrete cell, her empire reduced to static. In the news, she replayed the audio that sealed her fate. "Just because I clean your floors doesn't mean I don't see the dirt." The words echoed over and over. In a quiet office above a city reborn, Adam placed Zoe's acceptance letter on a shelf next to his most prized awards. Beside it sat a plaque that read, "Truth isn't loud, but it lasts." He leaned back, closed his eyes. A girl pointed out a single clause and changed everything. Now, from the ashes of deceit, a new foundation stood, cleaner, stronger, and unshakably honest. The empire hadn't fallen. It had been rebuilt by the one they never saw.